What is going on, Fantasy Points crew? My name is Trey Camberling. I'm obviously not Graham Barfield, not John Hansen, not Brian Drake, not the regular crew. It is Trey Camberling here. Kind of a special edition of the Week 13 Cashing Points. We had a massive DFS week here at the company. I was fortunate enough to win $20,000. I got third place in the NFL Spy. We had Darren Manser, who had a lineup that was pretty close there in the Millie Maker towards the end.
He was like top six, and then fucking overtime and fell a bit. But that was a fun sweat.
Yeah, just a crazy week, and had some subs. Scott, you can go ahead, but had some subs that did fantastic as well.
I think we had 3 with 15K or more, 1 with 30K. We have one guy who did like an 8 entry max, and like one of the lineups would have outscored the Millie winner by like 15. Crazy week. For people who don't know Trey runs video and social media for us, but he's also great on camera. We did the Chris Rodriguez episode together. But obviously the star of the show today is John Proctor. It's a Johnny week, folks. It's a Power Hour reunion. Trey is going to be hosting. Johnny and I are going to be firing off hot takes and bantering and probably arguing over some players I think I already know over who. These are our most profitable weeks. Johnny is just, the GOAT. He balances so well off of all right, here's the pool. Here are the players with upside, the range of outcomes, and then he puts all the puzzle pieces together. He's the DFS sharp that I'm not. And so I'm excited for today's show. Johnny, how are you doing?
Good, man. Good, man. Staying up past my bedtime for a show. So I'm excited to do it.
I hope the folks at home appreciate it. Johnny, yeah, way past your bedtime. But we're gonna win. We're gonna win a milli this week with the lineup we enter at the end of the show. So it's all gonna be worth it when we split that 3 ways. Trey, you wanna dive in?
Yeah, I mentioned on Twitter that I'm gonna go ahead and try to be the Mario Chalmers to the LeBron James and D Wade of DFS here today. So let's go ahead and get into the first game here. I'll kind of tee it up for you guys and let you go. So the first game on the slate, we're going to have the Chargers at the New England Patriots. There's rain in the forecast for several games this week. But on the Chargers side, it looks like Keenan Allen is dealing with that quad injury. He did not practice twice to begin the week. So he's officially questionable. And then a few injuries and a little bit of news on the Patriots side. Bailey Zappi was named the starter. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but it's definitely news. And then Zeke Elliott's got a thigh injury. Pop Douglas is concussed. He'll be out. And then on both sides, there's some offensive line injuries. So Trent Brown of the Pats and Trey Pipkins, the third of the Chargers. They both got 3 limited sessions in this week. So questionable, but with the 3 limited sessions, maybe leaning towards playing.
I think, for the sake of time, Johnny, it's Ramondre Stevenson, cash play, top 4 running back cash play. Keenan Allen, not as good of a play as Tyreek, but in play. Anything else you're seeing?
I probably wouldn't play Stevenson in cash. I'd probably play
Rashad White, Zach
White.
Moss,
but I think
McCaffrey.
I think Stevenson pops as like a top 4 or 5 value. I would agree there. I do think no one's going to play the Chargers. So I think they have some appeal to me in GPPs. I mean, they're 5-point favorites, decent 22-point team total. And no one's going to play those guys. I think, Everett may be a little interesting. Keenan a little interesting. He says he's fine. And he's like way cheaper than Tyreek, but not really an exciting game though.
Yeah, I will just say I do like Stevenson more than you. I know he's popped as a technical value a number of weeks now, but like I legitimately think he's a good play. Season high snap share to 78% last week, 21 carries, 19 XFP. He had 5 targets. He's had 5 targets in 5 of his last 6 games. And this is basically the usage that, you were hoping for when you drafted him. This is the usage he was getting last year when Damian Harris is banged up, and perhaps it's not a coincidence. Ezekiel Elliott is also banged up, questionable with a thigh injury. really good on paper matchup. I don't view him as too dissimilar to Rachaad White, but I'm with you that I do like White more.
Yeah, I just think that there's always a question of
cash viable, not a cash play, maybe.
Right. Yeah, I just think there's always a question of like what you know, the workload's been good the last 2 weeks, but it's like if he came out and got 10 carries and Zeke got 20, I mean, I feel like you wouldn't be like completely surprised.
I mean, I would.
Always.
It's been trending down and he's banged up, but it's just also the Patriots, but the Bailey's
the Bill Belichick running back. So
what about Jalen Guyton, min price? I think people are sleeping on him as one of these punts. Quentin Johnson sucks ass. Alex Erickson's the only other guy. The 2 games he played, 80% route share, second best on the team in terms of target share. Could just break off a long one because Justin Herbert's really good and Keenan Allen's banged up and gets bracketed.
Yeah, I like
matchup.
I like Guyton. I like Everett a little bit too. I just think those ancillary pieces are they're just really cheap, and they're projected to win. They're projected to score 23 points. I wish Eckler was a little cheaper because I would have some interest in him, but
I wish he was an absolute dust.
I mean, one of these weeks he's going to look better though.
I know.
And coming off the high ankle, and at some point it's going to be like, oh well, you missed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this week is kind of stacked with upside plays. So
yeah, I wish he was more in line with how he's played the last couple of weeks. But yeah, Guyton and Everett, I think, are probably the 2 Chargers I would look at. I just think it's just hard to play Keenan and Eckler at their cost in this bad game.
The next game on the slate is the Lions at the Saints. Both teams trying to get back on track. They dropped games to division rivals. Obviously, we all saw the Lions on Thanksgiving, and then the Saints dropping an ugly one to the Falcons. David Montgomery, he finished off the week with 2 full practices. He's dealing with a little bit of a foot injury, and he no longer has a designation. So we'll see David Montgomery. And then they're a little bit banged up on the offensive line. Jonah Jackson and Frank Ragnow both got in 2 full practices. So Jonah's technically still questionable, but would be surprised if we don't see them. And then just a little note, offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, we're kind of talking about Jameson Williams maybe getting a little bit more involved this week. He said the reps are going up and they're going to, the ball will keep gravitating towards him was kind of what he was saying. So that's pretty much it for the Lions. And then over on the Saints side, it's ugly. Kendre Miller's out. Rashid Shaheed is out. Chris Olave may be out. Michael Thomas is obviously on IR. So we're gonna have to find out who's gonna catch the ball over there. And I gotta ask, is this a week that maybe you go with the Tabernacle Tornado, the Provo Powerhouse, Taysom Hill? Is this maybe the Taysom Hill week?
It could be. Like Derek Carr has only played on 60% of the red zone snaps the last 4 weeks, and he's obviously been atrocious on those snaps. Massive touchdown upside. It's just you look at the price on Taysom, and he's like not at all playable on DraftKings. You look at the price on FanDuel, it's really tough. They're basically pricing in like he's going to be a quarterback for a full quarter. So he's someone I never play, but I don't know. I kind of understand it, but I'll never play him. What do you think, Johnny?
I think Olave is going to play.
Yes, so do I. And I think he's one of the best plays of the slate.
Yeah, I think Olave is a pretty good play. Man, Olave was a guy I really had started trying to bump up last week. Didn't quite get enough. But he was going to be like one of those players that you needed to have if he hadn't gotten hurt in game last week. What do you have? 21 points just in the first half.
Yeah, 7 catches, 114 yards in 2 full quarters in a bottom 5 matchup.
Yeah, so I think he's going to get peppered. I wish Taysom was cheaper and you could play him for those floors that he occasionally shows up with. I think Juwan Johnson will catch some ownership. I think he's okay. I don't really love the price because he's one of those guys with Taysom there is that one of those guys who can just not exist in some weeks. So
yeah, I mean his route share bumped up to 90%, and that was even in the first quarter before the injuries piled up. I like Brevin Jordan more, but it's close. Back to Olave though. It's 114 yards in 2 quarters. The week before that, 94 yards and a touchdown in the last 2 quarters of that game. It was a brutal matchup. No Shaheed, no Thomas. Now it's a top 5 matchup against Detroit. I think he's an awesome play, especially because with these late injury stuff, he's questionable. You always see ownership lag. And so I could really see him being, 4%, where he's a much better play than 4%, right?
Yeah, I mean, some sites aren't even like projecting him right now. So
I don't think he will. I don't think Stochastic is going to get to that till Sunday morning, if then.
Yeah, he's a guy that I will have pretty heavy exposure to. He's probably really the only Saints guy that I really love.
A.T. Perry's a fine punt if Olave misses. I think there's better if Olave plays. Shout out Danny Kelly.
Stinks though.
I was going to say Danny Kelly loves him. Danny Kelly is an elite film watcher, but Johnny apparently disagrees. Alvin Kamara, I think, is enticing, especially if Olave sits. If touchdowns didn't exist, he would be he would have 27% more fantasy points per game than any non-McCaffrey running back. There's a good chance of a spike week because the matchup's great. Could also be a double-digit target game just because of the injuries everywhere else. I think he's interesting as a GPP play. You disagree, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm not playing Kamara. Not paying 8,200. If you want to talk about dust, he's dust.
All right. Well, I'll bump him down my rankings, but that was my argument. I thought it was compelling. Detroit side, second highest.
I should say I think he's going to have some ownership, and so I'm not going to play him into some ownership. Got
it. Second highest implied point total of the slate is Detroit on the road. Jared Goff, I know we don't like to play him on the road, but he's, a slight value at 6,500. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is an awesome play. Trey hit on Montgomery being banged up, but now off the injury report. Nonetheless, he's getting top 5 usage just because this backfield is so valuable, and he is getting involved in the red zone and especially through the passing game. Really terrific usage. It is a good matchup, especially on the ground. But that might be an argument for David Montgomery. Also, game script might be an argument for David Montgomery, but I like Jahmyr Gibbs as a value. Your thoughts, Johnny?
He's a tough one because I think if Olave misses, I would probably remove Gibbs from my player pool because I think the Saints would get stomped. But I think if this game can be competitive, so playing Olave with Gibbs, I think is interesting. You need the Saints to show up for Gibbs to, have that value. Because I mean, he didn't really get a ton of usage until they were getting crushed by the Packers last week. So that's something I would keep in mind, is that I think the split is going to widen more than people want it to, with Montgomery getting the early work and Gibbs getting sort of the the shootout work. And he's a tough sell on the slate. I don't think I would play him over Bijan. I don't think I would play him over Rashad White, the guys in that similar range. I definitely wouldn't play him over Kyron Williams. So that's where it's tough for me. Just because I know David Montgomery is going to get 60-70% of the goal line carries if they get there, and that grosses me out.
Well, that was a really strong argument, Johnny. I'm on Ross St. Brown. I kind of like him as a fringe cash play, obviously not above Tyreek or anyone like that, but he's been the most consistent, highest floor player in fantasy this season, but also over his last 30 games. He's just so consistently money. But I think for tournaments, you can, there's other players who are lesser owned with more of a ceiling. You can make that argument.
Yeah, I do like the Olave
Laporta, I'm not on. I'm not writing up, but it is the second highest implied point total of the slate, and you never know. I think that's my only notes.
Yep. Yeah. If Love is out, I would be all over Detroit defense.
Over to the next game, the Atlanta Falcons at the New York Jets. Not a ton going on the Falcons side. Mac Hollins is listed as questionable. He's got an ankle injury. But then on the Jets side, all three running backs kind of have some issues they're dealing with here. Brees got a full practice in today. Dalvin Cook, he's dealing with a shoulder issue. And then Izzy Abanikanda, he's been sick all week. So those are kind of the big points from that game, mostly over there on the Jets side.
Yeah, so just thinking about this game, there's like no parity in the NFL this season. Just so many teams are just like dead, in my opinion, from a DFS perspective, just due to quarterback injuries or a number of different things. And so I really think this could be a game you just write off entirely, maybe with the exception of one player. I did write up Garrett Wilson at 6K. Part of the thesis there is just like, hey, listen, the guy's really good. He's seeing top 5 volumes since week 6. And, Amon-Ra St. Brown once hit 40 DraftKings fantasy points with Tim Boyle. So like, why not? I just think easily lowest implied point total of the slate, and Tim Boyle sucks. That's an easy argument against. Breece Hall, again, I wrote up and then removed from my article. It's the argument there was like, hey, like as bad as things look, like he's averaging 30 rushing yards per game over his last 6. But he's top 6 in fantasy points per game since week 6. And if you look at the production there, it's so volatile. 22 DraftKings fantasy points per game in his 5 best games, 7 in his 5 worst games. So maybe you get one of those good games, but it was thin enough for me to delete that. Any thoughts on Jets side before we talk about, I guess, the one guy on Atlanta's side?
I mean, you could like make the argument for playing Brees with Jets defense, but I don't think I could get there.
Drake London, amazing schematic matchup, amazing target share week to week, brutal on paper matchup. Did not make the cut for me, but I get it if you want to go that route. Johnny, you seem to be very high on this guy, and I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I think it's another week to play Bijan again. They said they were going to use him more, second half of the season, and then they did, and people still don't want to play him. I think one thing that is going to deter people, especially people who are heavy into projections, is the team total being 18 is a tough sell for like a mid to high priced running back, but I think projections and even the team total are maybe a little low in Atlanta. I think it was Silva who had said it earlier this week that the Jets defense looks like they're starting to give up. And so I went and looked at their rushing numbers over the last couple of weeks. They're giving up 4.5 yards a carry over the last 3 weeks, which is not what you would have expected, to start the season. So I think this is a pretty good spot for Bijan, especially paired with Falcons defense. Falcons defense will probably be the highest owned on the defense on the slate, and Bijan will come in around 5%. So if Falcons D crushes, I think Bijan does too.
Yeah, if you look at his recent usage over his last 2 games, nothing's changed except his red zone snap share jumped to 75% by usage, not raw volume. But that's massive. That from my calculations pushes him up from RB12 by XFP per game to RB7, and then factor in that he's far more efficient than the average running back, so it should be worth more than that. Jets run funnel, great matchup in recent weeks, good game script. I'm with you. Bijan plus Falcons D, love it. Great call. It doesn't look like we have him at 6%, so strong value too. Love it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
unless Trey wants to make a argument for Parker Hesse.
No, my buddy's good friends with Parker Hesse, a walk-on guy from out here, farm boy. Shout out to Parker Hesse.
Shout out.
But no, Hesse scored 3 touchdowns once in a preseason game. Pretty sure he did.
Did you have him?
I don't think so. I don't think anyone did.
Okay.
He was on the Bears. That was a weird day.
Well, speaking of tight ends, right? We got the Cardinals and the Steelers. More rain in the forecast over for this game. On the Cardinals side, Michael Wilson is out. Trey McBride and Hollywood Brown are both questionable, but McBride got 2 limited practices in. Hollywood has not practiced at all this week, so not sure how that's looking for him. Over on the Steelers side, Calvin Austin and Deontay Johnson will both play, and the Steelers should be getting Minkah Fitzpatrick back from injury.
It's weird to say. Yeah. Steelers are going to spank them, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up my notes and I can't find it. But Marquise Brown, what are your thoughts on this injury? Is he totally unplayable?
I mean, he got 12 targets last week. I think he's probably just as healthy this week as he was last week. But man, that Cardinals offense was like inept last week.
Yeah. Hollywood's interesting to me because I keep telling everyone in the everything report, like he's due for a massive regression. He's just had this brutal string of matchups, both schematically and on paper. And then this matchup looks amazing. Pittsburgh, super man heavy defense, rough on the perimeter, except Joey Porter's been shadowing and he's been really good shadowing. The thing is, I don't know how much that matters to Hollywood, who's like historically done well in shadow situations, but definitely does pop as a value. And like you said, brutal matchup last week and 12 targets, 88 yards. I thought that was really strong. He actually ranked second among all wide receivers in XFP last week. Any thoughts on that before we get to, I think, someone I like more?
Just on Hollywood?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy that like I would have in my player pool, but I probably wouldn't like push him into any lineups. If I ended up with 0, I'd be fine. If I ended up with 5 or 6% of him, I'd be fine.
Yeah. 4% owned. Yeah. Not a lot of people on him. Wasn't super high on my list. Someone who is higher on my list, but similarly low owned is my boy, Greg Dortch. And it's just like, help me out here, Johnny, because sometimes I don't know if this is just like, take lock from 4 years ago, but I've maintained this guy is good since he went UDFA. And whenever he's been given the opportunity, he's delivered. When given a 66% route share or more, he averages 14.8 fantasy points per game in 8 games. Rondale Moore, same thing, 9.3 fantasy points per game. Ran the same number of routes as Rondale last week. Out targeted 9-3, ranked top 15 among all wide receivers in XFP. It's a top 12 matchup, especially probably better than that if Porter shadows Hollywood. Again, there's all these injuries. What do you think about it being a Dortch week?
I just never know exactly like what usage he's going to get. Like some weeks they use him, some weeks they don't. They don't like him at all. Like when they have any type of a lead, because I think he's really probably not a good run blocker at all. Because he's tiny. But
there's no chance of that this week, though.
I mean, I think the Steelers crush them, but I'm not sure it's like they're ever up by 15 or anything. I don't know. I probably just like out on the Cardinals offense this week for the most part, but I think you could do worse. You could do worse, in that 3,700 range than Dortch for sure.
Argument for McBride is he's a baller. He's just been crushing it. Argument against is he's banged up. It's now a bottom 10 matchup. He had like 3 straight top 3 matchups. You could also, 4,900 for the volume he's been getting. You could say like if he were a wide receiver, like he'd be a great play. I'm kind of not as excited as I've been. And, we've been having this debate, Johnny, where I've been saying like, I want to go all in. So let's move over to the opposite side. Obviously, everyone's talking about how the Steelers, for the first time since before Matt Canada, the eclipse 400 yards from scrimmage. Kenny Pickett had the second most passing yards of his career. This is the Stone Nuts matchup. Really couldn't be better. Great stat that jumped out to me is their implied point total is 36% higher than their average points per game this year. So like this seems, if there were ever a week to play the Steelers, this would be it. I'm wearing a sweater and I turn my heat up to like 90, so I'm dying. So Johnny, lead it off with whatever you want to lead it off with.
Yeah, I think we should be back on Steelers pieces again before their prices go up to the point where they're probably like unplayable. I've seen some mention of Kenny Pickett. I'm not going to play him. I would never do that, but I think I like Freiermuth a lot. Coming off 11 targets, it's pretty clear that the new offensive coordinator is into using Freiermuth. And then wide receivers, it's just like whack-a-mole. I feel like I probably won't really be on those guys, but I do also have interest in Warren and Najee. It seems like Warren is going to draw a lot of ownership, so I will probably just sort of play a little bit of both of them. But I mean, obviously, they're big home favorite. Good with both of the running backs, but I think Freiermuth is probably my favorite play in this game.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned it, Johnny, but I've been struggling to determine whether or not this is me just being a great salesman for Fantasy Points Data, shout out, and our new tool on coverage shells. But like, obviously it feels like points chasing because he's 1,400 more expensive now after this blow up game. But a big reason why he was so involved supposedly was because Cincinnati deploying too high coverage. He only saw 9 routes against too high. He had 7 targets, 80 yards. That's insane. And if that's legitimately the case for this new offensive coordinator to, pepper Freiermuth against too high, it's like, well, this is the nuts matchup. Arizona plays too high coverage at the second highest rate in the league. So I'm happy to hear that you're on him alongside me. I will say though, I do like Deontay quite a bit. Only 5K. He's had at least 8 targets in 4 of his last 5, 27% target share. That ranks 7th most over that span. Would have had 17.5 fantasy points if Tomlin challenged that one end zone target. It's a top 5 matchup. So to me, I think he's a great play. I don't like Pickens, but
yeah,
the news that came out in the morning about wanting to get him more involved and the fact that he just like stared at that fumble, not great, obviously.
Yeah. I just prefer Freiermuth, I guess. So that's I'm not going to like go all in on Steelers here.
Freiermuth, by the way, only like 3% owned projected.
I think it's going to come up, but yeah, I was surprised by that too. That's probably also why I really like him.
I don't know if I have anyone else. No, I don't think so. I'm with you on the running backs.
Yeah, and I like Najee with Steelers D. I'm surprised. I mean, everyone's saying this is an even split or whatever, and it sort of is. But when they have a lead, I think they will lean on Najee more than Warren.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Over to the next game, we got the Colts at the Titans. The news everybody already knows. I'm sure Jonathan Taylor is officially out. He will not play. So fire up your Zach Moss if you've got it. And then on the Titans side, Treylon Burks had that crazy hit happen a few weeks back. Bad concussion. He may be back. Could be questionable. Not totally sure. And then Will Levis is a little bit banged up, as I'm sure most are at this time of the year. He does not have an injury designation, so it looks like Will Levis is good to go.
Johnny, I'll let you take it. Zach Moss projects to be 56% owned.
Yeah, about 44% lower than he should be. This is just a stupid price.
Is that your take? Is that he should just lock it?
Yeah, it's dumb.
So here are my thoughts on it. Yeah, without Jonathan Taylor, 22.3 carries, 2.5 targets, 22.2 fantasy points per game. That would rank behind only McCaffrey, 83% snap share. That would lead all running backs. He destroyed the Titans last time he played them, week 5. And over that span, Tennessee ranks 7th worst in rushing yards per game allowed to running backs. Game script projects to be good, all that stuff. Massive ownership. And like, this is where I struggle, Johnny, is like, do I want to be contrarian? If he flops I wipe out half the field. And, he's not getting that many targets. So maybe he could get scripted out. But the other side of me is just like, this is easily the best value play we've gotten all year. And like, you should just go 100%.
Yeah. So I think it's contest specific a little bit. So like, say you're playing the Thunderdome where he's going to be likely in every team, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be the one team who doesn't play him. I could see that, or the Millie Maker where the reward for first place is $1 million. Sure. But I think like every contest in between, I think you just sort of take that free square. I mean, he projects, like for me, like my projections, I have him running back 2, just like projected points.
Nice.
So it's like,
hell yeah. Yeah.
What's the point of not not playing that? So it's annoying because it removes a little bit of the skill of the slate. But if he's 60% owned, the odds that he's not a top 5 running back on the week is probably less than 40%. So
here's what I'll say. I'm mostly with you, just like nuts play, lock him in, maybe more like 80%. But then on the 20% of lineups, you don't have Moss, you have to be cognizant of like how you're playing against him, which in my opinion would be a Derrick Henry plus Michael Pittman mini stack as leverage.
Yeah. Yeah. If you say you want to do 90% of them and put 10% teams with Henry, I could see that.
Yeah.
For sure. I think Josh Downs is also a smash play. So it's like one of those weeks where I'm fine having running back, wide receiver on the same team. You go back.
Well, the question I think is it Pittman or Downs? And I'll just say this one thing is that for the 5th straight season in a row, Tennessee ranks bottom 3 in schedule adjusted fantasy points per game to opposing outside wide receivers. They're giving up the 2nd highest pass rate in terms of first read target share against the slot when Sean Murphy Bunting is fully healthy. They're a bit of a reverse slot funnel. So I think they're just both awesome values, but like that matchup matters to me.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, if I'm going to get 12 targets from each of them and
one's 2K less.
5K. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yep. Okay. But maybe that's something to consider for tournaments, although it looks like Downs is also lower owned.
Yeah. I just think it's important to allow you set the role of like one skill player or whatever. Make sure you don't limit that for your Colts. It reminds me of that slate where you needed Puka and Kyron because they were both 5K, like back like week 2 or week 3 or whatever. They both scored like 30 points. I think you could see that again here.
It's a great matchup for DeAndre Hopkins. I could see that hitting. I'm not going to be chasing it whatsoever. Chigo Okonkwo, great schematic matchup. He's super cheap. I could see that happening. I'm not going to play him. Derrick Henry, I did just want to say, like, I know last week we said this is the last week to play Derrick Henry, but like there's a chance, like most game script sensitive player in fantasy, but the spread is close, only 1.5 point underdogs, they can just score first and then it's the Henry show from there. Good leverage off of Zach Moss. It's also a great matchup. Over their last 5 games, Colts are giving up the 2nd most schedule adjusted to running backs on the ground. Really, to me, the whole argument is just leverage on Moss if you want it. And that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if I had any teams that don't have Moss, they would either have Henry or they would have Gardner Minshew on them. And that's probably the only way I would play those guys. Otherwise, I'd just play Moss.
Right. All right. We're good, Trey.
Yeah, the next game up on the slate is going to be the Dolphins at the Commanders on the Miami side. It's mostly good news on the Miami side. Achan's going to play, it sounds like. Hill's going to play. Mostert's going to play. The only bad news on the Miami side is it looks like Emmanuel Forbes is going to be out. He's dealing with that elbow injury. So that's really all the bad news for them in that game.
You were taking shots on him on Twitter the other day. Or just
Listen,
listing his stats.
I was just listening to the boss. He says go after him. Take him down. So,
we need those engagements, Trey.
It's about all we have in that game. So,
listen, we're going to be spending, I think, 30 minutes here. Tyreek Hill lock button play, Johnny.
At least for like your small field teams, cash games, yeah.
Yeah, so he's only projecting to be 25% owned, which honestly
it's gonna be way higher. Right.
Okay. So he has the most receiving yards through 12 weeks of any wide receiver since in the Super Bowl era. His 4.24 yards per route run, I thought was like impossible. Apparently not. I'm a big math guy. I look at matchups and trends, and like literally everything that could work in his favor is best possible. Sam Howell's going to have, Tua Tagovailoa is going to have all day to throw. Washington is getting destroyed by wide receivers, especially perimeter wide receiver ones. They're trash against the deep ball. They're giving up a ton of explosive plays. They play a lot of man coverage, with which Tyreek Hill destroys. It's pass rate over expectation is sky high. I could just go on and on and on. It's like you just do the math, and it's like this guy can score 60 fantasy points, and a bad game from him feels like 28. And Johnny, one thing I've learned from you, two things. Back to Zach Moss, it's that the cheap running back chalk due to injury, who's now a bell cow, is like almost never flops. That's like the strongest chalk. And then the other thing is, if a guy is chalk and he has legitimate 40 fantasy point upside, you don't fade him.
Yeah, in cash games, if you don't have Tyreek, you just shouldn't be playing them.
Well, I'm talking tournament. Like obviously, like Moss. Yeah,
Hill and Cal. So I think the problem with like locking Tyreek is that that like Tyreek Moss start is just going to be so. Obviously, I'm going to have a ton of Tyreek, but I would probably prefer to lock Moss than Tyreek, just because there's literally no one else who can score the same thing as Moss, like in his price range. I think there's an argument for some, like, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, Keenan could be, in close maybe to Tyreek. I don't think, you wouldn't project them anywhere near him, but they can be in that range, and just the volatility of wide receivers. But I'll be over the field on Tyreek probably, but I don't think I will lock him, just because I think but I do think when you play Tyreek, like playing Tyreek with Purdy is going to be bad, because that's going to be the cash game team that you're going to see. So when you start with Tyreek and Moss, you need to get different everywhere else.
Here's where I really struggle with this is I love so many players on the Dolphin side. And I think there's a chance, this could be like the Denver game, where you'll remember Tua hit the 3-point bonus, 4 passing touchdowns. Waddle was out. Tyreek had not a 50-point game, but he had 9 catches, 157 yards and a score with Waddle out. But then Devon Achane had 3 touchdowns, 233 yards. Raheem Mostert had 4 touchdowns, 150 yards from scrimmage. And like, I legitimately, Johnny, want to play full onslaught lineups that, not a ton of this, but like have exposure to this, where it's Tua or Howell plus Tyreek, Waddle, Achane, maybe Mostert.
Yeah, I prefer it with Howell, just because like I think with his running, he is like in line with the numbers you see from Tua. But it sounds like that's gonna. I'm starting to hear everyone else talking about that too, so it's gonna be annoying if Howell really bumps up in exposure. He was probably gonna be my favorite tournament quarterback, just because it's really fun to like play him, rotate the Washington guys, and rotate the Miami guys. Play Howell and 4 other pieces from this game. Was going to be awesome, but that might actually end up being popular. Though I feel like Hal just never comes in quite at the ownership you expect, because it's so hard to stack him. But you really, you can just play like one Washington piece and then just play a bunch of Miami guys.
I think like the core of what I'm playing this week is going to be stacks of this game. Tua plus A-Chain plus Tyreek, Howell plus Samuel or McLaurin plus Tyreek plus Waddle. Like, I don't know, like so many different ways to go, but I do want to just say I love Devon A-Chain this week. I think he's an awesome play. Something I'm seeing around the industry that everyone else is missing is like, they think he's going to get eased in. They think he's going to be on a snap count when we know that's not going to be the case. McDaniel said earlier in the week that he was only inactive because he wanted full confidence in A-Chain's health. He practiced all of last week. He practiced all of this week. I think he's all systems go. And so then what are you doing? You're talking about a guy who's only played in 3 full games. And in those 3 full games, he averaged 154 yards from scrimmage, 32 fantasy points per game. I get he's a regression candidate, but he also might just be the second coming of Chris Johnson. He might just be impossible to tackle, like everyone out of that camp says. He's leverage off of Hill, but you could play him with Hill. It's honestly a great matchup. Ever since Washington traded their only 2 good run defenders, they've given up basically season highs to Ramondre Stevenson, the Seahawks, Saquon Barkley, and the Cowboys. I love him. I don't. He's going to be like 6% owned. I think he should be like 30%.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. I do think I don't think he's going to be eased in, but I think that like the worst case for him though is like getting nicked up again and getting pulled. So we know that it's in his range of outcomes to get pulled, which stinks because I think he probably could have come back in the game where he aggravated the knee. I think he could have played last week. But I don't think there's any like restrictions on him going into the game. So obviously ceiling is massive. Floor though, is they take him out of the game, which sucks.
And then everything I just said about A-Chain, Mostert is could probably see more volume, just lesser efficiency, lesser big play upside, but could score a ton of touchdowns. Good matchup, like I just said. Works better if stacked with Miami's defense, which obviously isn't a great spot. No, even fewer people are going to play Mostert. Also works as leverage on Tyreek Hill. And then I want to make a case for Waddle, Johnny. I know you're going to say this is a Ponzi scheme and I'm wrong. But I mean, everyone wants to play Tyreek because it's the nuts matchup, right? It is. But Waddle has that exact same matchup. He also has the schematic matchup working in his favor. Tyreek is like 2.2 times as efficient as Waddle against single high. Against two high, they're much closer to even 1.4x. This was the same coverage scale matchup he had last week against the Jets, who have like an elite secondary, but top 5 too high. And he led the team in receiving yards with 114, 8 catches, just on 66% of the snaps. People are understating his volume due to some injuries. Tyreek leads the league in XFP per route run, but Waddle ranks 3rd behind only Tyreek and Keenan. Also, Tyreek is banged up. He has an ankle injury. He missed practice on Wednesday and it was limited throughout the rest of the week. Basically, he works as leverage, but like more than that is just like they can both hit.
Yeah, they can definitely both hit. And I mean, I think the Tua doubles are good. Ricky D, who's a high stakes DFS player, was on the Swolecast and he said Waddle every week is the the low IQ, high IQ, middle IQ meme, where middle IQ is like Waddle's great leverage, and then he ends up being like 16% owned. So nice. That's I feel like that will. I think he's probably right where Waddle will end up higher owned than we all think, just because people want exposure to this game, and he's 7,600 and Tyreek is 9,600. But yeah, I mean, obviously the ceiling is huge when your team has a 29-point total. So playing Tua, Tyreek, and Waddle is cool, and I think playing Howell with Waddle and Tyreek is interesting too.
Yeah, I love that. The big question there is who do you stack? Really, you haven't needed to stack because Howell, he's so productive, but he's really spreading the ball around to an insane degree. A stat I pulled that I thought was really interesting is in games Curtis Samuel wasn't ejected, didn't leave early with an injury. He actually leads the team in fantasy points per game, 0.1 more than McLaurin, well ahead of Logan Thomas and Jahan Dotson. And maybe this is like a real thing because his final season at North Carolina, Howell targeted Josh Downs in the slot on 41% of his throws. Like, that's insane. Samuel also gets the best matchup this week. Miami is bottom 3 against the slot over the last 5 weeks, bottom 6 across the full season. Good value. Terry McLaurin, like, the only argument for him is like, hey, listen, he's good. Like, we know he's talented and he's due. And like, sometimes that matters and sometimes that's real. And like, the matchup's good and the game environment's awesome. Logan Thomas, he's been a top 10 XFP value for like 10 straight weeks. I don't think he can post a tournament winning score, to be honest. I don't think he hurts you if he has a great game. Those are my thoughts, but what are your thoughts, Johnny?
Yeah, Curtis Samuel would be my top choice. I think he'd probably be everyone's top choice, though, if they're playing Hal. So I think we just need to monitor Hal's ownership. If Hal's really just like not going to be owned, then him with Samuel and Tyreek and Waddle is like one of my favorite tournament groupings.
That's a great call. Yeah, I think that's it. Basically, just like I'm madly in love with this game and want to play everything about it.
Yeah, it's not often you get a 29-point team total, so you should attack it.
Something else Scott is madly in love with, Marvin Mims is going to play for Denver this week against Houston.
Is he though?
It says he's in.
He'll be on the field.
Well,
I don't know if you call it playing.
He's going to put some pads on. Jerry Jeudy is also in on the Houston side. Dalton Schultz is out, so Brevin Jordan would kind of be next in line there. Noah Brown's status is still up in the air. He's dealing with that knee issue, and Tank is questionable, but apparently today he said he's going to be ready to go and he's going to play. So that's what we got for Denver at Houston.
Johnny, take it. I'm fielding a question.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a game where you're actually going to see the second highest owned quarterback of the slate in Russell Wilson, which kind of surprised me. Probably won't play him at all at that kind of ownership. He's been playing well, but the Broncos offense is kind of slow, sort of similar to like how Sean Payton was in New Orleans whenever like Drew Brees wasn't there, or when Drew Brees was banged up. They would just do these kind of like ball control type offense, which Wilson is playing well in, but he's like hasn't had a 20-point fantasy week since like what, week 5, week 4. So it's weird for me that he's going to be this highly owned. I mean, obviously Houston has upped the tempo for pretty much everyone they've played, but at the same time, they're really banged up on offense. It sounds like Dell is like playing well under 100%.
Can we hold Houston for now and just talk Denver?
That's what I was just. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm not sure like non-full strength Houston is enough to push Denver as much as sort of everyone else is saying. So I'm not as excited about the Denver pieces as the rest of the field is. I do like Javonte Williams though. I think people are sort of pushing him down. He was going to come in the week like probably top 6 in ownership for running back, but I don't think that's going to end up happening.
You want to guess how many yards per game Russell Wilson is averaging since week 4?
Yeah, it's pretty low.
176. Yeah. I'm with you. I saw him popping. I saw Jeudy popping. I saw Sutton popping. I just didn't get it. Unfortunately, that is like a great argument for Russ is like he's cheap and both of his receivers are so cheap. I'm not going to go that route, especially with like so much ownership. Javonte, I'm not about either. Like, I think we just know what this role is. He's Sean Payton's Mark Ingram, which means in games Denver leads throughout, like he should be a low end RB1. The rest of the time, competitive games, competitive wins, any type of loss, he's not going to get there. He's going to bust your lineup. You could play him stacked with Denver's defense, betting on a dominant performance, but I don't see that. Texans favored by 3 in this game. Not going to play Mims. I love Mims, but like, I don't know what Sean Payton's doing with him, but it doesn't make any sense. And that's kind of how I see it. I kind of just don't want to touch anything from Denver.
I think people missed last week that Williams left the game for a little bit.
Maybe I missed it.
Pirine scored the touchdown. So I think
But I mean, it was ideal great game script as well, and it was still kind of underwhelming results.
Yeah, but I think if he had scored the touchdown, people wouldn't be as negative on him. But I just he projects, you see him projecting for like 15 to 20% ownership. There's just no way, because literally everyone's like, I'm not playing him at that ownership. So that's kind of the only, he projects well and people don't actually want to play him. So I'll have some interest. I'm not in love with him by any means.
All right, let's talk Houston side. Per sources, Brevin Jordan is going to get the Dalton Schultz role. CJ Stroud likes him, has spoken highly of him. They did connect for a touchdown earlier in the season. This was a tight end my model really liked. I've given up on him, but at least he had that working in his favor. Noah Brown, my boy, is not going to play this week. Breaking news, courtesy of the Cashing Points podcast. So he's going to sit out. I expect Robert Woods and John Mechie to split the wide receiver 3 role, which means they have no upside. CJ Stroud, I think, is just, obviously Denver's toughened up in recent weeks. Some people are saying like they're due for a regression. They've kind of just run good on turnovers, but I don't know. I kind of think they've toughened up a good amount. I just don't know how much it matters when, CJ Stroud is just like such a god. And like the easiest cheat code in DFS over the last 6 weeks is just make a rule, must have at least one Texans wide receiver on every lineup. And that's kind of how I feel this week, especially with all of these injuries. One of Nico and Tank Dell is going to smash. If Surtain shadows one of them, the other guy is going to like mega smash. If Surtain doesn't shadow, both can smash. I would give the lean to Nico. I think the field is kind of underrating him, overstating Dell's monster games without him. And bottom line is like he's healthy, where, per sources, Dell is like legitimately banged up.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think my favorite play is Brevin Jordan, but I'm with you. Agree with everything else.
Awesome. Stroud's a good play.
I probably won't play Stroud.
He's expensive, and like no one's going to play him because of that.
Well, it's at cost and with everybody banged up.
Yeah.
Denver's slow. It doesn't feel like the ceiling is as attainable as it has been in recent weeks.
Yeah, but he's also like running so hot, like on a Dakian level, that makes me nervous to not play that.
Yeah, I mean, he's only had 1 week where you had to have him though.
Yeah, and that was a week where one wide receiver, or 2 wide receivers and a tight end were in the winning lineup. So like, why not this week?
Because
when everyone's cheaper and more condensed.
Because he plays Denver.
Right. All right. Fair.
I mean, it was also that week they were all like 6K. Like Dell was like really mispriced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we make fun of like the matchups don't matter, guys, but like there is truth to like offensive efficiency is more predictive or sticky or important than.
Yeah. I mean, you can run on Denver too. He was playing the Bucks that week. You can't run.
Oh, I did actually write up Singletary because, I could see it. Like they kind of hate Pierce. He did outsnap Pierce 47-11 last week. I think that was mostly just due to negative game script, but that could happen again.
Yeah. They also just like they played Jacksonville how you're supposed to, and they just like didn't try to run the ball. So I don't know if they'll do the same thing this week. Like they ran on Arizona and they ran on Cincy. Because you can. Yeah,
I heard they probably won't. I heard they'll probably go more run heavy this week.
Yeah. So Singletary is actually pretty interesting with everyone banged up. I could see that for sure.
Next game on the slate, we've got the Carolina Panthers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On the Bucs side, pretty short. Chris Godwin is questionable. On the Carolina side, looks like they're missing or may miss about half of their defense. A lot of injuries on that side of the ball. Mingo's in, Hayden Hurst is out, and Tommy Tremble is doubtful. So, Johnny, I got a question for you. Do you think Tepper gets on the line, calls Arthur Blank, and says, drop Parker Hesse? I'm going to put in the waiver claim. I need a dog. I need 3 touchdowns. I mean, do you think there's a possibility there, or what are we looking at here?
Hope so. We need more minimum price tight ends in our lives. Yeah. Oh man, this is an ugly game.
Yeah. So I got something. Tell me if this is too galaxy brain, but I'll be honest, I don't think it is. I've been talking about this for weeks now. So like Thielen, obviously, last 5 weeks, 10 fantasy points per game. That's wide receiver 49 numbers. But through his first or previous 5 games, he averaged 24.7 fantasy points per game. That was the overall wide receiver 1 production. Since then, his like volume really hasn't changed. Last week, obviously, it was atrocious, but still 25.5% target share, down from 28.1%. I wanted to blame this all on a tough strength of schedule over that down stretch. The 13th toughest, 7th toughest, 9th toughest, 3rd toughest matchups. That's again, last week, 3 targets, 1.2 fantasy points in a neutral matchup. Horrible, but he gets a perfect matchup this week. Buccaneers giving up the 6th most fantasy points per game to wide receiver 1s, the most schedule adjusted to slot wide receivers. He's going to be lining up against some dude named Christian Isian. And so 6,600, price has come down, underrated upside. No one's going to play him. Perfect matchup. Or what do you think, Johnny? Like just this offense is dead. The team has imploded. Thielen's dusty.
I wish they would drop his price more. Every week, like recently, I look at him and I'm like, but I mean, this is definitely the first time I've really actually had interest in him over the last month or so. So, I mean, he'll be in my pool. I don't know how much I will like. I don't know if I would play him in like a hand-built single entry team though.
Yeah. What about Evans? It seems like every week we're kind of sleeping on Evans. I mean, he hasn't really killed you, but he's underrated. 7,700. If you exclude that one game he left early with an injury, he's wide receiver 9 by XFP per game, wide receiver 7 by fantasy points per game. Not just on this slate, but among all wide receivers. It is a run funnel defense, but this is like a pass funnel offense. Evans has been shredding zone coverage, which Carolina plays at the highest rate in the league. I can just see him getting slept on like 5%, and he's been 5% every week. And like, he's played better than that.
Yeah. And I played a bit of him last week. But I guess the question is this week, can you play him over Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle?
I don't have it that way. Yeah.
Tank Dell, Ayuk. That's what's tough. He's like finally these guys around him that I feel like I can't play him over.
That's right.
But if Godwin misses, I think Trey Palmer's interesting, especially because he'll be like the 3K wide receiver that people don't really play because they're not going to know whether or not he's even available until after 1 p.m. lock.
Yeah, I thought about him. I'm not on it. He has like a 1.0 ADOT. He's running everything out of the slot. This is a worst possible slot matchup. I just think there are better puns. I'd rather play Mingo, honestly.
No.
We talked about Guyton. All right. Rashad White, easy cash running back. He's finished as a top 13 running back by DraftKings fantasy points in 6 straight games. To be fully transparent, like that was all 10 through 13, except for that 1 week where he led the position. Still, like as safe as they come, amazing usage. Now he gets a top 5 matchup. Carolina's a massive run funnel. Basically for tournaments, you could quibble with the upside, but for cash, I think he's an awesome play.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's just the highest floor in the mid range of like every running back, outside of McCaffrey. So he's great for, small field, single entry. He's great for, I feel like he's pretty much a lock for cash games this week. But yeah, ceiling is very questionable. Outside of I think like you said, the one game where he had the 2 touchdowns, he really hasn't posted much of a ceiling. So someone that you don't want to be like massively overweight on in tournaments, but definitely a good play. That's kind of it in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, if Godwin's out, you're going to see people talking up Kate Otten, but I think that guy fucking sucks, so I'm not going to play him.
Yeah. Fine by me.
Yeah. Next game on the slate is the Eagles at 49ers. Not a whole lot going on here. Goddard looks like he's still going to be out. Rest of the pass catchers look like they're in. And then on the 49er side, it's just Jordan Mason is questionable. So not really a whole lot going on there.
Johnny, how necessary is McCaffrey this week, both in cash and tournaments?
So I think the cash build that people are trying to make work, and I don't know if they're quite there yet, is like playing Moss, McCaffrey, and Hill. They're going to do it with Purdy. I can tell you that.
You can get that pretty easy with Brevin. Yeah,
so you're going to see a pretty popular sort of start of Purdy, Moss, McCaffrey, Hill, Brevin, Jordan. So if you build that team and you think you're really sharp, join the club. So that's where I think your cash games and your really small fields are going to start. So McCaffrey's ownership, definitely the ownership that you're seeing like right now projected on any site is probably wrong. It's going to come up. He's definitely not going to only be 20% owned. But I do think it's like if I had to pick one of McCaffrey or Tyreek, I'd probably pick Tyreek
for sure.
But I really like them both.
Yeah, I'm with you. Purdy, like I'm like a super Purdy truther, big time believer in him. Hype him up every single week. Like the 1 week he's chalk, I kind of want to argue against him. His home road splits are like just as egregious, if not more than Jared Goff's. Smaller sample, it could just be noise, but I want to quibble with it, but like obviously he's the cash quarterback play of the week for sure. For tournaments, he's still there. Honestly, Hurts and Purdy both like they're going to get pushed, right? And anytime these quarterbacks are pushed, they post monster scores. They're 2 massive pass funnel defenses going against each other. Purdy obviously has the top 5 matchup where Hurts has the bottom 5. In truth, I don't really think matchups matter that much for Jalen Hurts. So I like both quarterbacks, although I'm more excited about Miami, I think. But this is really close. We'll talk wide receivers. This is kind of tricky for me. I had trouble ranking these guys, but Ayuk versus Samuel. I give the lean to Ayuk because, again, they have a top 3 matchup, but I give the lean to Ayuk because he's better than Debo. He's going to get the better end of this matchup. He's more involved through the air than Debo, is still relying on rushing production. It's a man-heavy matchup, which suits his skill set better. Eagles are especially vulnerable deep, which is where Ayuk excels, et cetera, et cetera. My lean is Ayuk, but Debo's still an okay value in his own right. Eagle side, I found this to be much more difficult, Johnny. AJ Brown has the nuts schematic matchup in his favor, which has really mattered for him this year. The issue with that is like literally everything else I'm looking at points in Devonta Smith's favor. That's that the 49ers have an incredible pass rush. Brown has like the most egregious splits I've ever seen versus the blitz or when pressured. Really, he's reliant on Hurts having time to throw and for his routes to develop downfield. So they're top 6 in pressure rate, top 6 in average time to throw, top 6 in completion percentage allowed on deep passes. Devonta also is just like he's been more productive. He's been more efficient in games without Dallas Goedert. And I really do think there's something to that. To argue back against all this is just like, hey, before some tough matchups, AJ Brown was, like Tyreek Hill. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Both guys, by the way, project to be sub 7% owned. What do you think, Johnny?
The one thing too I wanted to just talk about with the Purdy thing with like the home road splits is that I think those are noisy because the whether or not Trent Williams is playing is, I think, the biggest piece, or playing healthy, the biggest piece for Purdy. So I don't know how many of those like road games and home games he's on the field. I think that's mostly what has mattered for Purdy, is having that healthy O line.
Yeah, Ryan focused on the home road splits. You're bringing up that, which I think is really interesting. Jake also had a good split too, is against top 7 pass funnels. Purdy averages 333 passing yards per game, 26 DraftKings fantasy points per game. And so for a guy like this with small samples, you can have a lot of fun with splits, and everything besides home road is pointing in his direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like with Trent, I can say like Trent matters.
For sure.
I have no idea if the home or the road matters or whatever. Eagles defense stinks. So I think not really scared of them whatsoever. As for the wide receivers, I think one thing too that's important this week is to consider Kittle sort of as one thing that's important just like every week for San Francisco is to consider Kittle like as a wide receiver, because people are always like, oh, you can't play Kittle when, over Brevin Jordan. And it's like, it's important just like not to consider Kittle as a tight end, because he's really not. So you don't, playing Brevin Jordan, Juwan Johnson, whatever, and then you want to play a double with Ayuk and Kittle or Debo and Kittle, is totally fine. He's probably the only tight end that I would consider as a flex this week. And so, because go ahead.
Since week 3, Kittle has scored 16 and then 2 and then 28 and then 1 and then 13 and then 27 and then 24 and then 23 and then 5 DraftKings fantasy points. So just like doing some math, it's like there's a 33% chance he just absolutely tanks your roster, a 55% chance he falls short of value, but then a 44% chance he's easily the tight end 1 of the slate and you regretted not playing him. And that's something you want to lean into for tournaments. Eagles are far more vulnerable to wide receivers than tight ends, but this is a top 12 matchup for Kittle. You could argue he has more upside than from what we've seen from either wide receiver, as awesome as Ayuk has been, ranking behind only Tyreek in yards per route run. Yeah, I'm with you. I like Kittle. I'm curious. So like Johnny, if I said we have to make a game stack around this game, how you would play it. If I had a guess, I would say Purdy, CMC, Kittle, and then like Devonta.
If I was doing it for a tournament, so I think in tournaments, especially this week, I think Purdy and CMC paired is bad, because that's like the cash core is what people are doing. So Purdy paired with CMC is going to be like the highest owned San Francisco pairing. So I'm not going to do that in tournaments. But I think it's kind of just it sucks too, because it's like the 3 pieces that you're pairing him with, but like picking between 2 of those 3 is so hard, between Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle.
Shout out to the MME bros. Nice having to make that decision.
Yeah, I'm gonna rotate them. So
What about the Eagles? Devonta versus AJB.
I lean Devonta just because price is really nice. Not a ton of guys in his range that I really like more than him. Waddle you like with the stack, and you like Dell, with that game too, but just like by himself, I think I like Devonta the most out of that group.
Nice. Weird how Jack Stahl is just not even close to in play ever.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's it from this game. Again, this isn't. What would you say? This is the second best game to target?
Yeah. And I mean, Hurts too is like just he's not going to get played. He's really expensive. It's hard to make work.
Yeah.
Last game, excuse me, on the slate here. We got the Browns versus the Rams. The Rams, it looks like all systems go, unless I missed something. I didn't see any issues there with the Rams. And then on the Browns side, Amari Cooper will play. Kareem Hunt is cleared to play. And then the biggest story of the week, Smoking Joe Flacco, Elijah Moore's guy, is getting the nod at quarterback. I know Scott is over the moon about that. Going to be playing him everywhere he can, I'm sure. But yeah, that's the last game, and that's the last news.
Yeah, I mean, so you could just totally write off the Browns because they stink on offense, and it's a brand new quarterback who's 47 years old and all that. But I'm seeing 3 possible plays who like really excite me. David Njoku's eclipsed a 20% target share in 6 straight. He averages 8.8 targets over that span. Decent 55 yards per game. This is a Rams tight end funnel defense. Easy top 5 matchup, a massive, again, tight end funnel match. So volume should be pushed in his direction. I will say, like, if this were DTR, Njoku might have been my favorite tight end play of the week. Maybe even it was PJ Walker too. With the new quarterback, there's a little uncertainty. Are you saying Joe Flacco loves the tight end?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you saying this is fine? Don't even worry about it.
Yeah, I like Njoku a lot.
All right. So that's just one. Amari Cooper, he hit at least 90 receiving yards in each of his last 4 with Deshaun Watson, has done nothing with any other, averaged 20.3 fantasy points per game, did nothing with any other quarterback. You could say like all he needs is a competent quarterback, and maybe that's Flacco. Rough matchup for him on the perimeter, not going to play him. But I am excited, as Trey alluded to, is Elijah Moore. Why? Because I've just been hyping up this guy for years, and it hasn't made me look good. So like maybe this is finally the week. Like it all culminated in this week. Elijah Moore finally wins me a milli, or maybe I'm just gaslighting you for the 50th time. But yeah, so Flacco, it's a small sample. Flacco had 1 start with the Jets in 2021. And Elijah Moore scored 32.6 DraftKings fantasy points. The game before that, Flacco only threw 3 passes. 2 went to Elijah for 40 yards and a score. Rams are a mega tight end funnel, but they are also slot funnel-ish. Elijah, by the way, like he's not seeing anything catchable, but the raw volume is good. 7 targets in 8 of 11 games. Last 3 weeks, 8.3 targets, 2 carries per game. I love Elijah. Johnny, just talk some sense into me.
I think he's gonna get owned. Of hearing
was it my tweet that did it?
No,
Okay.
Just everyone talking about them playing together.
I mean, did you hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So like
they're boys. It seems like.
Right. They had breakfast together one time in New York, and so now, Elijah Moore will be the highest owned 3K wide receiver on the slate. But no, I mean, I think you can sell yourself on it at least. Elijah's definitely a better play now than he was, any other week. So
yeah.
Someone said triple stack Flacco. Man, imagine if Flacco won the milli again. That would be fucking amazing.
Well, I'm trying to build these Miami onslaughts. I did have one that was Flacco plus Elijah. I thought about also adding Njoku, but felt like it was too much.
Yeah. Flacco's won the milli in like 3 seasons that he wasn't a full-time starter. It's so wild.
Wow. Well, yeah, that's just Brown side.
I think
can you punt with Flacco? You can.
I mean,
you could. Maybe it's better to play the opposing defense, but
yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't do it, but I guess it's cheap enough. You could definitely give it a whirl. I think Jerome Ford's a little interesting. Flacco does throw to the running back, so I think you see an uptick in targets, but
yeah, we saw that last week.
Not really a guy that I'd be stoked about.
I think it was last week.
Yeah, he got 7 targets.
Yeah, but he also had like a 77% route share, something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think he's finally just like fully healthy.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt's not.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt stinks.
Yeah. Ram side, I legitimately, well, I guess you called it. You called it week 2, Johnny. You said Kyron Williams is the new Todd Gurley. So, whoa, what are we doing here, Thomas?
That was not Thomas. That was me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Dude, you could have just thrown Thomas under the bus. I never
Yeah,
would have known.
Thomas, come on, man. What the heck? No, that was definitely me.
All right. Yeah, Kyron Williams, new Todd Gurley, 7 games this season, 80.3% snap share, 16 carries, 4 targets, top 5 in XFP, top 2 in red zone XFP, top 2 in fantasy points per game. Basically, like the closest thing to Christian McCaffrey within this sample. Why aren't we viewing him as 95% Todd Gurley at 80% the salary? Browns have struggled against the run since week 7, bottom 7 in yards per carry allowed, rushing fantasy points per game allowed. Johnny, you made us a shit ton of money last week. Why not just go back?
Yeah, I'm going to jam him again. I don't know why the industry doesn't want to play this guy.
Awesome.
Everyone's an idiot. He's also going to play more this week, I think, than last week. They got up. We saw he like continued playing in the passing game like that fourth quarter, but we saw a lot more of Royce Freeman. Like just in that fourth quarter, Royce Freeman didn't play as much earlier in the game. So I think if this is competitive as it sort of projects to be, then I think we just see like a ton of Kyron and he came out unscathed. So I think they go back to 85%, 90% of him, and whenever a running back plays 90% of the snaps and is talented, I just want to play them. Everyone wants to play Rachaad White, and he sucks. So I don't know why they don't want to play Kyron Williams. It's weird.
No one else on the Ram side is. You can make a case for Puka as a contrarian play, but it doesn't excite me.
No.
Well,
Rams defense with Kyron.
Yeah.
But they're expensive.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Well, yeah, I think that's it for all the games. If we want to throw up here the lineup on DraftKings and see if we could put one together here, that's going to take home. I got to set up for the SPY in honor of last week. So take home the SPY, the $100,000. If you want to throw that up there.
Finished what, 3rd last week, Trey?
I finished 3rd, and I need to say this because it's been really on my mind. I played on Thursday in the SPY, and I finished 1,085th out of 1,111 people. So I came crashing back down to earth. I thought maybe I'd figured out, everything there is to know about DFS, but yeah, still working on it. But I thought that was pretty funny. So
well, JM to win says the goal should be either to finish 1st or last. So you're batting 1,000 in the last 2.
Based on where you landed, I think the only people that lost to you didn't enter a lineup.
Yeah, it's just as impressive to finish that low than it is to finish that high. So at least I'm in the right mind frame, All right.
What do we want to do here, Johnny?
Well, we're locking in Tyreek Hill, right? That's what we said?
Or no? Want to do the Tyreek and Moss start? Might as well.
Yeah, and just be every other lineup. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's we can play Kyron and not play McCaffrey. That makes it different.
Yeah.
And then Tua or Hal? Or do you want to play a different quarterback?
I feel like just to make it more interesting for ourselves, we go a different route. But we could do that. That's easy.
Or we could do the Purdy build to be contrarian without McCaffrey. Then it's going to force you're going to have to pick the wide receiver though.
All right, so it's either Tua and then I want A-Chain in the flex, or it's,
if we're playing A-Chain, we should play Howell.
Okay. I know. I think I think A-Chain scoring a receiving touchdown this week for sure. But all right, let's do you can take out A-Chain. Let's do Purdy, Kittle, Devonta.
Okay, let's see.
It's a little tight.
Yeah,
And I mean, it was Brevin Jordan on the list here.
We can play Brevin too.
Cheapest defense, and then just see what we have left.
Let's see who is the
just to see. We can do
play Patriots defense, and then we have
Elijah, A.T. Perry, Greg Dortch. Yeah, Greg Dortch.
Or we could play Curtis Samuel.
Oh, can we fit him? Nice. Yeah, there you go.
I thought it was kind of interesting, like building like a Sam Howell, Curtis Samuel. Like I was looking at it a little bit earlier and kind of had a similar line.
Oh yeah, hit clear real quick, Trey.
We are so close to playing Sam Howell, but we can't afford.
Yeah. All right. So you start us off, Trey. This is your.
I think I have a lineup built. I don't know if I can pull it up here, but I know I was on. So what I had was, I had Christian.
Let's see if we can optimize it for you.
I had Christian McCaffrey. I had Zach Moss.
All right, so we're cash.
And then I did have Rashad White.
In the flex. We'll take him out.
I had Tyreek Hill. I had Curtis Samuel. I had Sam Howell. Now it's about remembering. I think I did go with the Chargers. And then I had this is ugly, but I had Jameson Williams, I believe, and then Brevin Jordan.
So I would take out Rashad White, questionable ceiling, mega ownership, cash play. I would take out Chargers defense. I just on principle hate paying up for the highest own. And I think there's honestly defenses with a higher ceiling this week. I would take out Jameson Williams just for now, but if you like him as an upside play, I get it. Johnny, Waddle or A-Chain. And I would really throw out correlation because I'm expecting Miami has the potential to score 50 plus points this week. And when that happens, throw correlation out the window. I don't care if you're a running back, everyone can get there. Doesn't matter what position you play. And I also think A-Chain scores a receiving touchdown this week.
I mean, if you want to compare it to that, week when they smashed Denver, Tua wasn't even the Millie winning quarterback. So, when the running backs go that crazy.
Yeah, but if a team scores 50, the opposing quarterback is probably positively correlated.
The opposing quarterback. Yeah. I'm saying I'm not stacking Tua with the running backs.
Yeah, but we're not. We have Howell.
I know. I just meant you wanted to do it earlier. So it's just.
I mean, I'm going to do that. Fuck it. But I'm weird.
All right. Let's see. What do we have left if we do that? We can play. I do think the Patriots are the best punt defense.
All right, keep them. Wait, actually, go back down to defense. Sell me on Patriots over Broncos, over Panthers, over Titans.
They're cheaper than all of them.
Yeah, but 100.
Chargers are missing everyone.
Oh, that's true.
The Panthers are missing 6 guys, or might be missing 6 guys on defense this week too, from what I was looking at.
Yeah,
if that matters.
No, you're right. I mean, Broncos defense has been stout, and Houston's lost a ton of guys. So, I'd say
Patriots are at home. I mean, I like Tennessee too, but it's 400 more.
Mm-hmm.
Project similarly.
All right, so I would click Patriots just to see what kind of room we have.
Just
Samuel, right?
Yeah, if we do These tournament teams with McCaffrey and Tyreek are just tough.
Something. I mean, I went 2 tight ends last week. I don't know if there's another wide receiver in that a little bit cheaper than A-Chain you could go with to maybe make room for a second tight end. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do that. Click out A-Chain.
Because last week it was Fryermuth and who else did I have? Evan Ingram.
We liked
Njoku.
We liked Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Chris Olave. We talked about Adam Thielen. I'm trying to remember.
Keep forgetting because he doesn't show up in the pools.
Who?
Chris Olave. Oh, there we go. I got it. If we do Howell, Kyron, Moss.
Ooh, you probably perfectly fit Fryermuth if you wanted your tight end in the flex.
Well, we can do it with we can do a team with George Kittle if we want to go that route.
Cool. So let me change this to Kyron. Ooh. And who else were we taking out of this one?
We can upgrade Fryermuth to Kittle.
And then you can upgrade Patriots.
True.
Broncos. I like it. Nice lineup, Trey.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, I think the thing that I liked the most to start was just the Howell and Samuel stack. I just kind of like you guys are saying.
What sucks is I think that's gonna just get really popular. Because it was one of the first things I wanted to do was build Howell with Miami pieces, and then I keep hearing people talking about it, and I'm like, fuck, everyone else likes it too.
Yeah. That's how I've kind of been, and I'm Scott said, I'm new to DFS just this year, so I know if I'm like, oh yeah, that's really nice. I know there's what's in this contest, 4,000 people. There's probably 3,500 people that think it's really nice too. So, but yeah.
I mean, this is is this a small field or medium-sized tournament, Johnny?
It's like mid-size. It's not small, but it's winnable.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go too crazy about ownership, Trey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the first thing I did was put Howell and Samuel there, and then I fit Moss and McCaffrey and Rashad White. But yeah, I don't know.
That's going to be massive chalk, I think.
Yeah, I just think I kind of like what you guys said about Rashad White, and then if the Panthers are just really that banged up and their defense is just a bunch of backups, but I don't know. I definitely like something in this game, but I'm not. I have to think on it for the rest of the week. But Rashad White's kind of the first guy that's jumping out.
All right, well, folks, there you have it. There's your lineup. It's Johnny's bedtime. Really appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate Trey for hosting, filling in for Graham. We're going to be running our super early bird special, I think next week or the week after, where basically you would get the rest of this season free, but then also next season for the cheapest price we'll offer all year. It will never be cheaper than it is for this brief, 2-week period. Super early bird. Be on the lookout for that. Subscribe to fantasypoints.com. Subscribe to Fantasy Points Data. Like, comment, subscribe. I don't know, Trey, help me out here. What do I say?
Like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your friends' family, tell everybody. Just thanks everybody for being around and tuning into the show. We have a blast doing it, and my first time doing it. Hopefully it wasn't too crazy for you guys, but appreciate Scott and Johnny for coming on, the two legit best in the business. Like I said, I'm just kind of learning, and I'm just a social media guy, and won 20 grand last week. So it's major shout out to Scott and Johnny. I've been learning a lot just by producing these shows, some of them, and now hosting for God knows what reason today, but I had a blast and again, thank you to Scott and Johnny.
I think this lineup's missing Parker Hesse.
Every lineup's missing Parker Hesse.
That's right. Yeah. All right, we're out.